And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to solder a motor wire onto one of the motor pads of the ESC. I've turned this over actually. You do have solder pads on both sides of an ESC usually. There are various different types, but yeah, we can just use that side there. Again, you're going to cut to length. Make sure that there's no frays in the wire. Apply a little bit of your flux from the pen, and in this case we're going to turn it up a little bit to about, I go for about 380 usually for a motor wire. That should be sufficient, and we're just going to tin up this wire. And again, apply a little bit of heat to the wire itself so that gets a little bit of heat, and that is going to dissipate the solder through that wire. So then you're just applying a little bit of solder on there, and boom, there we go. And that is nicely all the way through that wire, you can see. And again, you don't want lots of excess wire showing on here. It needs to be kind of the right amount of wire, you know, for the job. So that's going to fit on nicely. What I'm saying is you don't want, you know, that stripped off further so that you've got exposed wire. That's a mistake that a lot of people make. So we're going to just apply a bit of heat to a pad here, a bit of flux rather, to a pad. And again, I'm actually not using the right tip for this. I should be using my slightly wider tip for this job, but we'll see how we go with this. Should be okay, but I would tend to use, so just give him a little bit of heat there. Okay, bit of solder on the tip, nice clean tip, and you see how that just about took. Probably didn't have quite enough flux on there, and also the solder tip that I'm using is not really the right thing for the job, but we do have ended up with a nice clean and bright and shiny solder joint there. So again, we're going to just line this up. I tend to put on the motor wires diagonally. You'll see that when we wire up our ESC and motor wires on our quad. Okay, just again, really important at this point. Not, you know, you don't want it there, you don't want it there. You want it directly over the joint itself. So just apply a little bit of heat until you can feel that blobbing up, and there we have our solder joint. And this will come with practice. Again, you may not have as great a joint as that to begin with. Nice shiny joint, but yeah, after a little bit of practice, this will be second nature. And there are a couple of practice boards that you can use to practice. There's the Mamba practice board. I'll provide links in the shopping list and in this lesson. There's another one by a guy called Mute FPV. If you watch JB's video, I think he demonstrates with that. It's a bigger board. It's made, I think he had it manufactured by a Chinese company called PCBWay. But if you Googled, well, watch the JB video, and the guy who designed the board is called Mute FPV, and that has everything that you'll need. So it's got the battery pads, it's got motor pads, it's got nice little you know, FC pads as well. The problem with the Mamba one is that it actually doesn't have anything big enough, I don't think, for the actual the battery for the pigtails. Other than that, it's pretty good for just practicing on. Up to you which one you want. So we've done wire through, wire on for the flight controller, and we've also wired up a motor wire to our ESC, and that's nice and secure, as you can see. So now we can move on to soldering up a pigtail to the ESC battery. So what we're going to be doing is basically soldering these guys up to here. I'm just going to use a smaller one because it's slightly easier for the moment. And for that I have definitely changed the tip. I should have actually changed the tip for the motor wire to this one here. Again, like I say, you can use an even wider tip than this for this job. I get away with this. It's okay, but you want to pump your iron up to its max, and if you put the firmware on there, you can go to 450. But 400 is generally okay for this, I've found. So first thing we're going to do, as usual, is we're going to just tin the wire. This wire is actually kind of pre-tinned already, but we'll give it just a little bit more for good measure, and then we're going to tin up our pad here. So get a good bit of solder going. Okay, and what I generally do is just apply some heat to the wire itself, because we want the solder to actually melt through this wire. Now watch out, because these wires do get hot. If you want to hold it, just hold it with a pair of tweezers. Okay, so we can see that's kind of starting, I think. And these wires are definitely the most difficult to work with, just simply because of the thickness of the wire. So again, we're going to apply a little bit of heat, a bit of solder to our pen, to our iron rather, and we are going to just try and get this to solder all the way through. Again, just keep applying that so that it melts all the way through the wires. Again, you don't want any frayed wires coming off this at all. See that blue tack stuck to that. That's one of the bad things about blue tack, but because it does tend to stick, but it's easy to get off. So we've got a nice soldered tinned wire there. Okay, and then we're going to prepare the ESC pad. This is the battery pad that we're using. Don't forget to clean your tip. Always clean your tip between doing anything. Okay, nice shiny tip there. And we're going to apply some flux paste to our pad here. And we are going to apply some solder to the tip, and just get a little bit of this, and you'll see this get onto there nicely, so it's a nice puddle. Okay, and that's about enough. Like I say, this one is definitely too much. Okay, possibly a little bit more. Yeah, that's fine. All right. Again, for this, definitely use a pair of tweezers, because this is going to get really hot. You don't want to be holding this in your hands. So we're going to basically just line him up and apply heat. Keep applying heat until you feel that melting in. And this will take, you know, a good amount of heat. Should be until you start to feel that just get nice and puddled in there. Now you see that solder now is a little bit grey. We don't actually want that. We're going to apply a little bit more flux to that. So that we can get him nicely down onto that pad. And you can always apply a little bit more solder. So at that point we can, I think that's fairly well on there. Just apply a bit more solder to that guy so that he's nicely on there. And he's fairly nice and tight now. A nice shiny joint, that's what we want. And a good secure joint onto that pad. And that's really about it. Again, like I say, JB does a much better job of this than me. I have been soldering for quite a while. I still have problems with soldering these XT60 leads on. They're not the easiest things. Motor wires and the wires to your flight controller are fairly simple. You just got to get in there as quickly as possible so as not to lift the pads off. Apply the right amount of temperature. Always apply your flux, and you should be good. Just to go over quickly some of the things I've mentioned in this lesson on soldering. This is the desktop soldering iron that I mentioned, the Hakko FX888D, which is widely recognized as pretty much the best soldering iron that you can buy, available on Amazon. It's reasonably pricey. They're in Australian dollars, 151, but yeah, you wouldn't go wrong with that. I mentioned a video by Joshua Bardwell on soldering, his latest tutorial. Very good in-depth video to watch. Yeah, so most FPV pilots need to watch this soldering tutorial. The practice boards that he's mentioned in the past, I haven't ever got one, but it's a reasonably good one, a Mamba practice soldering board. As I say, it doesn't really have any pads for battery leads. These would all be like motor pads. Obviously you've got your flight controller pads here. I guess, you know, reasonably good to practice on this kind of thing as well. You sometimes see that on electronics. So that's the Mamba one, and he also mentions in his video the Mute FPV soldering practice board, which is yeah, pretty good one. The other thing I mentioned was a video by NJ Tech on how to solder wires together, basically just pressing two frayed edges together and pinching them together and then soldering, but he does a good job of that. So I've given you a link at that point that he starts mentioning that. This is mainly about the TS100, so you could watch the whole thing. It's a fairly old video, but yeah, he rants and raves about the TS100 as many other people do. So go and have a look at these videos and links. The Mamba practice board, the Mute FPV practice board, the link on soldering wires together, and Joshua Bardwell's video as well.